on the air or the internet, there's no point. I've got to then disappear.
Well, that's right. And at some point, I'm afraid for a period of time, all of us activists are going to have to disappear. But I think there's ways to prepare in advance to be able to get some word out, to give some direction, to give some leadership to where people ought to be going, to coalescing. And I think we have to prepare in advance for that. And that's not only a safe location, but that's has to do with safe communications and alternative communications.
No, that's what I'm doing now, is learning how to use shortwave transmitters and then have people that are ready to get the message. I mean, I want listeners to understand something. I'm really preparing. I mean, I really believe this. People are like, oh, you just want to sell some preparedness book. I hope that we fix things and it doesn't go where it's going, but I hope we wouldn't get Obamacare. I hope the TSA wouldn't be at highway checkpoints. I mean, I saw them on C-SPAN 10 years ago lay out their plan. That's what's so frustrating, Joel, is so much of this is out in the open to those of us that research, and then the general public just says, oh, none of it's true. They have no idea how real this is.
One of the problems that I have to deal with all the time is nobody believes that there's an ulterior evil agenda involved with that. They believe the terrorism excuses, and I have to go to great lengths to try to give them examples of how terrorism has been created, that the terrorism prosecutions have been because of agent provocateurs hired by government to go in and give them the weapons, to talk them into using them, to cajole them, to twist their arms, to bribe them. Without that knowledge, which the mainstream media does not give them, they're incapable of coming to the conclusion. And to some extent, they're guilty of having and not listening to conscience. I believe that everybody who really is an astute listener to conscience is going to get nervous feelings about where this country's going, about the excuses government gives. They're going to suspect that something's wrong. And if they don't suspect, I don't know if we can help them.
Well, exactly. I mean, if you're not noticing what's happening now, something is fundamentally wrong with you. I mean, the bedrock tyranny of TSA announcing all over the country they have plain clothes, undercover people listening to our conversations. Isn't that a desperate gambit to just scare us that, ooh, you're being listened to? Or
getting us used to it.
Yeah.
And I think that was the reason why they leaked, the government leaked to the press some of their illicit transcripts so that they could come up with a congressional solution that would give government partial power. And with that partial power, they can hide even more illicit surveillance. I mean, they're surveilling everything. They have been ever since Islam was created. You know that. But I think that this is a matter of leaking to the press mistakes that we make, getting Congress to give us permission to overcome it, and then we just keep building this tyranny system. And we mustn't make the mistake of thinking because they're building the structure that it's imminent. Because if we cry wolf too often that it's imminent, it's next month, you know, all the time you have somebody saying that somebody was a Christian, heard he was part of the National Guard, and he heard that they're going to take over next month. We've got to be careful of those kinds of disinformation things, because I think we mustn't discredit the fact that it really is going to happen someday by those that are crying the sky is falling too early.
I agree with you. But I mean, at so many levels, the system has taken over, but the massive purging isn't here yet. And you know, Joel, I happen to really not just know, I understand people speaking out have actually slowed it down as well.
They have. I agree with that. They have become more concerned that this is getting, and frankly, I have to admit, you've had the widest influence in this nation on alerting to people on a broad range of subjects of conspiracy that is believable. And that's concerned. The establishment, it has slowed them down. They have to be more careful when this information is getting out there.
Yeah, I mean, watching my own show or watching my own radio show, listening to it, it's quite a spectacle of hysteria sometimes. But I think the fact that I am genuine and real of spirit, that telegraphs to people. So for all my faults, God has used what I've done towards good. And but undoubtedly, we're reaching 15 million people conservatively a week now. And I have my employees being followed to work now by the government, harassment's increasing. But I only take that as a fact that we are having an effect. Joel, we're going to have to do another interview in depth, and things are quickening, so we have to do it in the near future. But in closing, since you mentioned it, spend a few minutes on basic home defense and preparedness, because once you've picked your place, your book also gets into ways to fortify it, protect it, Spend a few minutes on that.
Well, that is my specialty, is how to fortify a home and not make it look like a fortress. And essential to that, as I mentioned before, is having underground space. I do not recommend underground homes, per se. The resale value is abysmal. There have been underground homes that have been beautifully lavish, designed, million-dollar homes that have been on the market for years, and they can't find a buyer. It's just not wise. You say, I'm not going to plan to move, but people do have to make changes. So I recommend building conventional structures above an extensive basement space so that the basement is, some of it may be visible and some of it invisible. I think it's important in designing a structure that you don't put any equipment that has to be, that you can't personally maintain into that secure part of the basement. You've got to have an open mechanical room where that stuff can be maintained. Otherwise, you end up opening your secure door and letting in workmen, which compromises your security arrangements. It's also important to have alternate energy equipment. And this has the range of multiple fuels for heating the home, multiple fuels for heating water. I've done several tests with my family on living under survival conditions, and it's extremely important under the stress of living in less than optimal conditions, closed conditions in an underground shelter, to have hot water. It's a very soothing thing. So having a solar hot water system, or using excess solar energy from your solar panels once the batteries are charged to heat hot water. It's a little difficult to do electronically, but we know how to do that, and that's important to do. Having some way to secure windows and doors. I have a strategy, for example, where the homes that we design, or the ones that we remodel, we harden that master bedroom door and jamb so that nobody can burst into that bedroom, even if they gain access to your house. We try to design houses, for example, where the children can get to the master bedroom without having to go through the main stairway or the main hallway. Then from that master bedroom, they can get downstairs into a shelter system without having to once again come out of the master bedroom into the hallway where an intruder might be. These are the kinds of strategies that are important in designing a home or remodeling a home that really make a difference between a home that doesn't operate in a crisis and one that does. Obviously, we try to integrate in generating facilities, and I like to make sure that generators don't run constantly. Problem with automatic generator transfer switches is once they turn on, the generator keeps running whether you're using electricity or not, and it uses a lot of fuel. So we like to design systems so that you can shut down that generator once it starts and use it twice a day to charge things up, use a battery bank or a solar system with a small electricity between those times. Those are the kinds of things that allow you to live off the grid without the $100,000 that it normally takes for an off-the-grid home. In other words, using minimum off-the-grid techniques rather than trying to spend a whopping amount of money to have total off-the-grid homes. So we use electricity while we've got it. We're prepared to run at a minimal level once that electricity is gone, and with multi-fuel contingency for operating the various systems of the house. We also deal a lot with Windows security as well. If you have strong doors, and metal jambs on the outside, you need to look to the windows, the weak link. And there's a multiplicity of window treatments. They are rather difficult and expensive to do, some of them, but at least we can use polycarbonate acrylic sheeting on windows to stop vandalism from happening. We can prepare with mylar sheeting to cover broken windows if they get broken during the winter time when you might lose all of your heat. And we also have designs for gravel wall construction, for example, a very economical way to make bulletproofing of walls an alternative. It's not so much that you're trying to make the home a fortress, but sometimes if people take pot shots at you, if they're resentful of you having electricity and they don't, it's nice to have walls that you can actually hide behind and feel safe behind than the typical wood frame wall, which bullets pass right through. You know, you see all those movies about cowboys and Indians and people hiding behind the walls in a gunfight. Well, it just doesn't work in reality.
No, it certainly doesn't, and there will be those type of issues. But unlike other societies that have collapsed, we have so many people that are armed. If things do collapse, it's going to be so explosive.
It will, both for good and for evil. And I happen to think that because so many people are not prepared, even good people are going to have to take the streets to survive. And that's why I say we need the contingency planning of being able to get out of harm's way, get out of confrontation ways, so that we're not having to confront well-meaning good people who didn't prepare, who frankly just want to take your food. And if you share all of your food with everybody that comes along, you'll be hitting the streets just like they will, as unprepared within a day, because it just takes that long to share your food. So you have to be a little hard-nosed about the fact that you can't share everything.
Well, look, that's my point. I've warned people, I've talked about it, and my kids come first. And so there's not going to be a bunch of charity if this stuff actually implodes like this. Folks signed on to the New World Order. They laughed at us. That's their problem. Right now is my charity trying to wake them up and warn them.
And I feel the same way. It's not that we don't want to help, but you can't be true to your family and your preparations and give to everyone who hasn't prepared. People have to take the consequences for their lack of feeling that there's a problem and lack of sense. The information's there. You and I have been on the air for years, Alex. The information's out there, and people need to take responsibility for what they know.
Sure, I've learned in business, though, in most cases, if you give people things, instead of them even appreciate it, they think it's owed. So my problem is if I give neighbors something, then they're going to come back and say, now I demand more. So, I mean, I've seen that weird human psychology. It's very bizarre.
Well, I think in the future crises, it will make some people better. It will make a lot of people worse. And like World War II, it's not going to be easy to live through. But I believe that we'll get divine assistance if we do our part in helping and try to warn others. And I appreciate what you've done, Alex.
Well said. Yeah, the evil forces have the devil, we have God. Folks, the book is Strategic Relocation. It is the best book out there. Real knowledge, deep research. I mean, the Texas Hill Country is a tiny area outside Austin, and he knows all about that because the info I read in the book, it was very accurate. From my own research, before I'd even read his book, I decided 5 years ago to move out there. And then a couple of years ago, I finally read the book, the second edition. I was like, wow, this is really good information. It's available at INFOWARS.com. And Joel, let's have you to town to do another big report, in depth. Thank you for spending so much time with us. I hope viewers out there get this video out to everyone they know. Joel Skousen of World Affairs Brief, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this extended 2-hour-plus transmission of InfoWars Nightly News. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. I hope we're wrong about all this, but unfortunately, something tells me we're not wrong about it. So please get ready and prepared today. And the good Lord willing, we'll see you back here tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Central.